Let's start by, first of all, talking a little bit about you, your background. You're a professional photographer.
Ended up in Omaha, went to a bar called the MAXWELL. Probably get me a job as a waiter or something like that. Lo and behold, the man was Larry King. I had no idea who he was. It was just a whirlwind. He had all this money and power. Within a couple days, I was off on a private jet.
When you say important people, Rusty, are you talking about political?
It went all the way up to the White House. These people were leaders of industry. They were doing things that I did not feel was right. Who would you go tell? Because they pulled the puppet strings. There was one instance where Colonel Michael Aquino came to a motel room, and he got from Larry King a suitcase, and it was filled with bearer bonds and cash. There was millions of dollars in that thing. It was for the Iran-Contras. Embassy Row in Washington, D.C. They had parties there. On the surface, they looked like all up and up. Then the party was over with, and there'd be a few guys that would stay after. They would have a sex party. This was at King's house.
Okay. How could this man afford Learjets, lavish parties, and also renting a mansion on Embassy Row in D.C.?
He would prime client. Prey would be a better word for it.
Mm-hmm.
They went to this church and hit him up for $1.8 million. Well, there was a set of nuns that he got a bunch of money from, a couple $1 million. There was Boys Town and various other organizations. Everybody doesn't know what goes on at Boys Town.
As I recall, Rusty, the Boys Town was one of King's primary recruiting grounds for young boys and girls.
Very much so. I believe the man who's running it now is Father Val Peter. Not a good choice.
Okay. Why is that?
He was up to his elbows in this. What they were doing is providing sexual favors to
whoever had money or political influence.
King told them to. Usually it was done for the purpose of compromising somebody. It didn't take me very long to figure out that they had two sets of books going. I knew that was wrong. One of the things that really made me worry about how to get out was the fact that I'd seen Robert Wadman.
He was the chief of the Omaha Police Department.
Yes.
Wadman was pretty deeply involved in abuse of the kids, was he not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the girls that he frequented was Alicia Owen.
Okay. I do remember that Alicia Owen's allegation was that Chief Wadman had made her pregnant.
He covered up so much stuff. You know, Larry flew little kids all over the country for people to be sex toys for people with perverse needs.
You know, I heard that there were somewhere in the neighborhood of at least 80 people.
He got kids from all over the country. A lot of them came from Boys Town or orphanages or places to where they'd really not be missed. He also cataloged kids. He'd pick them to order.
Okay. It became known popularly as the Franklin cover-up, and Senator John DeCamp, a state senator in Nebraska, was on the banking committee, as was Senator Loren Schmidt. This started out as a banking investigation into the Franklin Credit Union, which was being directed at the time by a man named Larry King, not Larry King of talk show fame, but a gentleman who apparently was very big in Republican politics, not only at the state level, but he sang at the inauguration of I think it was Reagan, wasn't it?
It was 1984 and 88.
84 and 88. And he was also head of the Black Republican Caucus. This guy was a mover and shaker in Republican politics. And what started out as a banking investigation quickly led into this area of human trafficking, prostitution, pornography, and drugs, I think, as I understand it as well. And more. And more. And now what's going on here is King was arrested and ultimately charged with embezzlement and not anything at all to do with all of this other stuff. So what we're doing now is we're kind of talking about the real action that was going on here. Let me ask you this. You were talking about him paying Wadman, Chief Wadman of the Omaha Police Department, who, by the way, is gone, long gone from there, as I understand it.
He's out teaching law in Utah.
Yeah. Where was King getting $50,000 a week to pay Wadman?
Well, he was making his money supposedly off these restaurants and that. But what he was doing is he would hit up these churches or whoever else, and he'd tell them to write it to account number 888888.
Okay.
Which was his account.
His account, okay.
He he would pay the interest on it to whoever the group was or the person investing it.
Right.
And when it came time to renew it, if nothing else worked, he'd offer him 1/4 or 0.5% more interest.
Did any of this other money that he was paying Wadman, did any of it come from other criminal activities?
I don't doubt one bit. It was nothing unusual for Larry King to have $1 million on his American Express card in a month.
Wow.
And pay it off.
And pay it off.
And the way Larry put it was, this is so bizarre that nobody will ever believe you if you told them.
Mm-hmm.
When I got into this, I had no idea. I thought I was working for somebody legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time that I realized that it was not on the up and up, it was to the point to where what I'd seen would have probably brought me in as an accessory,
mm-hmm.
even though I had no involvement in it.
Yeah.
Who do you go tell?
Right.
Because, you see the chief of police taking money. He's rubbing elbows with all these powerful people. He had a daycare center in Omaha that he ran as a nonprofit.
Are you talking about King?
Yeah, Larry King did.
Okay.
And the guy that owned the building got wind of what Larry was doing
mm-hmm.
and basically boarded up the doors.
What was Larry doing at the daycare center?
Oh, he was finding kids.
Okay.
And he would go rent them out,
mm-hmm.
Whether it be for himself or for others.
How did they get that past the parents, for example?
A lot of them were orphaned street kids. He'd say, well, my son's having a party, a sleepover, or something like that. His wife, her parents were doctors in where else but the Cayman Islands.
Oh, boy.
Okay, there's 2 places left in the world where you can hide money, and that's Belize and the Cayman Islands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So basically that's where a lot of the money ended up going.
What were you involved in?
Well, I was his photographer, and I shot the parties. He would have these $5,000 and $10,000 a plate fundraisers.
Mm-hmm.
He had me made over. One morning he spent $4,800 on clothes for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he went as far as to have my hair cut, colored, and permed by Nancy Reagan's hairdresser.
Okay.
$2,000 hairdo.
Wow.
Yep. Didn't blink an eye at it. The things that I was shooting would be these parties. Lo and behold, he had another photographer that was shooting the kiddie porn, the gay porn, the snuff films.
Snuff films.
I did say snuff films. That's where they would actually kill somebody.
Okay.
And have it on film. They would sell the tapes to these wealthy business people for tremendous amounts of money. This is where I got approached on various occasions to do these things, and I wanted no part of them.
Mm-hmm.
And one person of which was the late Hunter Thompson.
Really? So Hunter Thompson approached you about doing a snuff film?
Yep.
Okay.
He was introduced to me by Larry King, and he offered me $100,000 to shoot a snuff film. Or actually, Larry offered it to me, but it was through him.
Yeah.
Larry really pressured me to do it, and I wouldn't do it. And he had this other photographer who was doing these things for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the other photographer on 3 different occasions. One of them, I even got to go talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
The guy had the same build that I had, pretty much, a little bit slighter, but he just happened to have the same curly, dark hair that mine had been made up to be.
What do you attribute that to?
What they were doing...
Are they framing you?
Yes. I was their scapegoat.
Mm-hmm.
They were passing me off at the parties where the families and all the attention was at. He would have one party that was the social gathering. You bring the wife, sometimes even the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, there would be a few people that would stick around or come back, and they would have a separate party.
Mm-hmm.
And that was these sex parties. Your wildest dreams and worst nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's what went on.
Wow.
They would get these kids from the street.
Mm-hmm.
He'd offer them a life, and they didn't realize that he was going to be president.
Which president was it?
Reagan.
Reagan.
Had been there.
Okay.
And I'd seen the Bushes. There were various people that I'd seen. The one that's sitting in the White House right now.
Okay.
I would not trust that man with anything. He's a snake in the grass.
Okay.
lo and behold on that, sorry to inform you people that like him, but if you knew what I knew about him.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of these things that went on, and it was really a shame because you couldn't get anything done about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thing is, you know, if you told somebody, you may be telling the wrong person.
Yeah.
And it would leak out, leak up, whatever, and you may find yourself dead. You may find family members dead, hurting, whatever. I've been shot at 3 times. I was riding my bike in Portland, Oregon, and I got intentionally hit by a car. They drove by about 50 miles an hour and opened their back door and hit me.
Wow.
Okay, I got epilepsy out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, this is what I have to deal with.
Yeah. And
that just because I went to work for somebody in good faith.
Yeah.
And ended up seeing way more than I ever wanted to or dreamed of.
Mm-hmm. How many children or young people that were involved in this, how many of them do you think were utilized in snuff films? Was there a lot done, or was this something that was a rare occasion?
It happened, but the thing was I have no idea how many actually got made. Because they would go to so many different places. It was nothing unusual for Larry to be on a private jet 2, 3, 4 days out of a week. And, you know, he could be anywhere. And, you know, some of these things were cloaked in secrecy because a lot of them were instigated out of SAC. That's the Air Force Base in Omaha. That's Strategic Air Command.
What did they have to do with it?
That's where a lot of the MK Ultra things went on, the mind control.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit about that, because when you say the mind control, you know, now how familiar were you with Paul Benassi?
I testified at his trial against Larry King, where he won the $1 million judgment.
This is the civilian lawsuit that Benassi filed against him, right?
Yeah, I think it's February 5th of 1999 in Judge Warren Urban's court.
Okay.
You know, I knew Paul. I wasn't really close to him.
Yeah.
But, you know, I knew of him. That's pretty much the way most of the people I knew in Larry's organization, I knew of them, but I didn't want to get close to any of them.
Right, okay.
A lot of the kids were brought in. They were either drugged or they'd take them through this MK Ultra and do the mind control. Larry was very good at that.
Now, and you say that the SAC base, Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, that was a facility where they took these kids?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Air Force Base, because I know Paul Benassi talked, you know, quite extensively about stuff that he'd been through. He was also, from what I understand, the psychiatrist that looked at him. He was himself a multiple personality, had been traumatized, and these compartmentalized personalities had been set up in him from when he was just a child. He claimed that he had been taken to Offutt Air Force Base, did he not?
Yeah. When I was with Larry and we went out to Offutt, what struck me funny was he would go right through the guard shack. They didn't stop him for anything. Didn't matter who he had with him.
Okay, so it kind of implies that he was well known there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Rusty, in your time with him around Larry King, did you ever see or know about any kind of cooperation that he may have had with any kind of government agencies, i.e. CIA or any of these other agencies that might be involved in some kind of covert activity?
Oh, yeah. You know, Michael Aquino was a colonel in, what was it, Army or?
He was in the Army.
He had various ties to, like you said, the CIA. And the FBI, things like that.
Yeah.
Getting back to that daycare center I was telling you about.
Yeah.
The guy boarded up the doors, and we were on a private jet to Washington. And he'd called Wadman, and it was beyond his hands by that time. And the sheriffs, he called them trying to get it opened up. They didn't want to touch it. State Patrol didn't want to touch it. So he was upset. And he called Reagan direct, and I sat there and listened to the phone call.
Yeah.
And I could hear because I was just right next to him, and it was open within 20 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he had the juice.
Oh, he had the juice. King
was also involved in kidnapping.
Oh, yeah.
What knowledge do you have of that?
They'd have what they call catalog kids. they would basically just go out driving around looking for kids. And they would take pictures of them and go to these wealthy, influential people and say, you know, would you be interested in this one or that one or the next one? And they would basically go snatch them.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what happened to Johnny Gosch.
So Johnny Gosch was definitely
Johnny Gosch.
So Johnny Gosch was definitely part of this orbit in his selection and kidnapping.